Hello and welcome to Meow2 with Miki and Adam. G'day, welcome. Today we're going to show you how to do a direct sunlight analysis from a grasshopper script. So this is what it looks like, and we're going to show you how to do the script via grasshopper using Ladybug. Okay, so first things first, if you haven't downloaded Ladybug into Grasshopper, you're going to want to go to the website called Food for Rhino and type in Ladybug. So Food for Rhino is a great website for Grasshopper apps and other things. So you can see there to click on Ladybug and just scroll down and download the latest one. So we've got Ladybug already. So we'll go back over to Rhino. So this is our file. We've got a few layers that you probably want to have pre-modeled. We've got our, switch it to a view that we might be able to see. So we've got our city block and we've got it all into files. So we've got our city context, which is our city block. We've got our street footpath, which is this gray bit, and then we've got our roads, and we've got our little test area. So we've just done a separate, just plainer modeling here just to test. This is the actual area we want to test. So it's a bit easier to differentiate it in Grasshopper. So what we're going to do is crack open Grasshopper. The script has four main elements to it. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to get our weather files. So we're going to use, Ladybug uses EPW files. So we're going to use the EWB import. And we're going to need to load this weather. So we're going to download the weather and we're going to use the map to import it. Okay, so first things first is we're going to go to a map. So this one, let's just check this. This one needs a toggle, Boolean toggle. So we're going to toggle that one. And that basically sets us so that we can download our files. So we'll double click that to yes. And that opens up the Ladybug weather map. Okay, we're going to search for Australia. And we're going to zoom in because we're over in Melbourne. All right. This one will work. So we'll just right click that and you can see we've got two options here. We've got download a copy. We're just going to select copy. And we'll go back over to Grasshopper and we're going to create a panel. And we're going to double click and we're going to right click and paste that link. And as you can see, that's given us a little zip link, and that's basically where we're going to put our weather, and we're going to put that into the URL. So once we've connected there, we're then going to put the EPW file into the EP file and connect. We're just going to double check that's all great. So it looks, just going to select panel. There you go. And we'll just check that there's some information. Okay, so that looks like we can see that there's got some information. So that looks like that import's worked. So we don't need that anymore. Okay, the next thing we need to do is we need to set up the timing of our sun. So this is when we'll be doing our analysis period. So we'll go across to analyze data and we're going to do the LB analysis period. So we'll select that. Okay, and that's going to need a few requirements. So we can either use sliders or we can use panels. So we're going to do June 22nd. So we're going to do the 6th. So if we just do a slider, enter. So we're going to do the 6th, which we know is the June. And our start day is the 22nd. So we're going to do 22nd again. We might do a number slider. You can do any days you want, but we know that these doing these ones, and our end day. So we know that our end days are the same as our start days because we're just doing the one day, but you might be doing an extended period. So we can just plug them both in. Our start hours. So we're going to do 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. So we'll just double click and we might do a panel for this one. So you can just to show that you can do it both ways. Panel. resize that a bit. Resize that a bit. Double click. 09, 9 a.m. We're going to enter that into our start hour. And we'll copy and paste. And we're going to do 3 p.m., which in 24-hour clock is 15. So we'll select 15. Okay, so that's our end hour. All right, so that's basically our time period set up. Now you can, as I mentioned, you can select any dates. We've chosen winter solstice in the Northern Hemisphere. The next stage, if we go across, is we need to create our sun paths. So let's go to visualize data, and we want to do the LB sun path. And that's going to create our sun paths. Okay, we're just going to run through and put some of this information in. So at the top, it's asking us for north. And as we can see, the default is 0. And it's asking for a number between -360 and 360. And for the counterclockwise position between north, and north is the y-axis in degrees. 90 is west, 270 is east. Okay. So if we look at go back to our model, we go to the top view. In this particular model, the sun is coming from the right of your screen. So coming from here. And we know that 0 or y-axis is north, or as grasshopper was treating that as 0 as north. So if we go back into grasshopper with north again, we see here that north is 0 and east is 270. So we need to change that. So if we just grab a panel, and we're going to change that to 270 so that that is our north. Okay, we'll plug that in. So that's done. Next, we need our location. So we can get that from, because all the way at the start here, we created our import data. So we've got our location, and we can plug that in. Next, it's asking for HOIs as a list. So we've got the HOIs from our analysis period, and that's basically our date time. And that's it there. Daylight savings, we're not going to worry about. So all that looks good. The next thing we need to do is we need to do our period of sunlight hour analysis. So if we go across to our analyze geometry, and we're going to do direct sunlight hours. Okay. And what do we need from this? First things first, we need vectors, and we've got our vectors from here. So we can go across and click that. Time step, which default would be 1 to 1 vector hour. So I would keep that as the default. The next thing we need is our geometry. And the geometry is basically what area we'll be testing. So we double click and create a geometry component. So we're going to select our test area. So geometry, set one geometry, and our pink area, which is we've just turned on our test area, we're going to select that. Just to see that it's worked, we'll go across to a different view. Okay, we can see that green pin highlighting. That generally means that the component has accepted our geometry. So we'll turn off our test layer and we can see it here. Okay. Next thing we need, so we plug that in and we'll just rename that street, because that's what we're testing. And then the next thing you need to do is provide the context. So the context is what would provide, what would be making shadows over your area. So in our model, it's our city area. So we've got all our buildings. So we'll create another geometry component. And we're going to right click, set multiple geometries. And we might just change the view and we'll be able to select them all here. So we've got them all highlighted, hit enter, and we can see that they have been added. Click on that. So what we'll do is we'll turn the previews off. Okie doke. So put that into our context. We've got our geometry, we've got our context, and we've got our grid size. So the next thing, our grid size is how big our grids will be on the area that we're testing. So depending on the size of your file and the area that you are testing would be dependent on your grid size. The smaller the grid size, the more computer power it's going to take and the longer it will take. So it's best to set a higher number at the start just to do test runs. And then if you need to get smaller, you can do that now. It's a lot easier to do that than the other way around. So having done this before, I know that the computer will handle our 1 by meter grid. So we can do our grid size as 1. But if you are unsure, I would start at either 10 or 5. And worst case scenario, you can do 10, run it again at 5, run it again at 2, run it again at 1. It's a lot easier than the other way around. Okay, the next thing we need to do is just offset our distance. So this basically just sets the rays just a little bit off the area that we're testing. And this just helps from a visualization point of view. So, or if you're wanting to check someone's eye heights or someone's, or whatever you were doing, you could offset it from the ground. But we know we're just going to test it slightly off the ground. So we're just going to put a 0.1, just a little bit off. Now, the last thing we're going to do, or the second last thing we're going to do, is we're going to add a legend. So if we go across to extra, legend parameters, we're going to add our legend. And the main thing we're going to do is we're just going to set the parameters of what our legend will be. So we know that there's a finite answer with our hours. It can be 0 hours of sunlight, or it could be a maximum 6. So what we're going to do is we're going to set these minimum maximums. But if you were doing other series of testing where you're trying to test a known quantity, it's always good to set the parameters of your legend, so that way your color, your results will be consistent and you'll be able to compare them quite easily. So just use some number panels for this. So 0. And we want to do 6. All right. So that's given us our minimum max. And there's lots of other things that we can go into that we won't go into today, but this will give you other variations of what you can do with the legend that it generates. Okay, so plug the legend in. And the last thing we need to do is we just need to run it. So we need to create another toggle, Boolean toggle, and we're just going to plug that in. Okay, and we're ready to run. So again, just a reminder about the grid size, to just be sure to set that depending on your computer system and how much detail your model is. Ours is quite basic with some simple massing, so we know we can run it. We've run it before, but just again, always check it if it's a bit bigger. And the other thing I always tend to do is just file save it just before you run these any of these testings, just in case it does crash your computer. You don't want to lose all your work. Okay, so we're ready to go. So we've saved it, and we're just going to double click and set it to true. And if we go across to our top view, we can see that we've got our sunlight analysis. Or if we go across to parallel, we can go and see this. So we can see that it has worked. Okay, and it looks to be working fine. Now, one thing is good. One thing I always do as well is I would just do a little bit of a control check. So this looks like it's worked. We believe this was kind of the result, but if you've got a result that wasn't quite accurate, or doesn't seem right, I would always double check it. So one thing we can do is we can just flip some of this geometry and just see if that affects it. So if we click one of our middle buildings, we'll rotate it by 180 degrees. Okay, yep. So we can see here that this has changed the result straight away. So all of a sudden now this area is getting 0 sunlight hours, and it sort of builds out and fans out, which is what you would expect if you had this type of area. So we know that this is creating a pretty accurate result. So we'll flip that back. Again, if your computer was struggling to compute this, I would turn it off and then switch the building. Generally, don't do too many changes to your results when the grasshopper script is running, unless it's easily handling it. Okay, so we've got our results. The last thing we do is now bake them. So we would right click and go down to bake, and we've got our layer results and hit OK. We would now toggle it off. You can see our results still there. We can go across and we can see we've got our results. So you can see in the shade, a ghost of view or shade of view, you can see how it's come up as the mesh, and that's come up as a group. And we've also got our results here. So if we were to turn our layers off and just have our results here, we can see there. And so we might highlight that and move it to the side. Turn our layers back on. And you can see if we go back to our parallel view, we've got our legend over here. We've got our results, really clear results. And then you can start doing what you need to do. But okay, that's it. Okay, and that's all. So thanks for watching, and until next time.